A little bit about the further data that we have from the BaSICS trial. This was a trial conducted with a grant from the Ministry of Health in Brazil, and also Baxter provided us with fluids and logistics. And I have to acknowledge that all the data I'm going to show, it has as first author Fernando Zampieri and as senior author Alexandre Biasi. So I want to cover these 5 topics. First, if you should give balanced solutions instead of saline in septic patients. Does it matter what fluid the patient has received prior to the ICU admission? If you should give fast or slow infusion when we resuscitate the patient. What we know about physiology, and also if we can individualize therapy based on our data. So first, this is the last interaction from the Surviving Sepsis campaign, and as you might probably be aware of, they suggested the use of balanced solution, and this was based on, and this was based on this meta-analysis from these 3 cluster randomized trials that were available by that time. As you can see, we have an estimated effect of 0.8. But the BaSICS data was not available by that time. BaSICS study was published in JAMA later on, and we randomized more than 10,000 patients with individual randomization to receive balanced solution, meaning plasma light or saline. And those patients were admitted in the ICU, and they have to have a risk factor to increase the mortality, the prediction of mortality. And they also have to have an indication for a fluid resuscitation. However, this is not a fluid resuscitation RCT, because all the fluids that the patient received during the ICU have to be either plasma light or saline, certainly respecting the compatibility of fluid dilution. So, as you might know, the BaSICS trial was a neutral trial, but we do have a predefined sepsis subgroup, and in our analysis, the estimated effect was a 0.9, and so a little bit similar to what the meta-analysis of the cluster randomized trials has found. However, we also have another approach to the data. This is published in the Blue Journal, and what we meant to look at the data using another approach, which is the hierarchical analysis with using win ratio. Win ratio is a sort of analysis used more in cardiology. We don't use it in critical care, and I think that this is an innovative approach where you use a hierarchical endpoint, and you see if there is a win or not in each group, interventional group or in the control group, and you count the wins. And if there is no win, for instance, for mortality, you go for the next outcome, which in our case was kidney replacement therapy. And again, if there is no win, you go for hospital length of stay and then for ICU length of stay. And using this win ratio analysis, we were not able to find any difference in the wins between the groups in the whole analysis. And we had a pre-specified subgroup analysis by type of admission. So here we are seeing the type of the planned admissions, where most of the elective patients were. And here is the group of interest for this lecture, which is the unplanned admissions with sepsis. This is the unplanned admissions without sepsis. And in any of these groups, we were able to show a difference in the win ratio between the groups. The BaSICS data was also very important in this meta-analysis that was published by Naomi Hammond and Fernando Zampieri recently. As you can see, we contributed with a large amount of patients, and the final results of this meta-analysis was that we can estimate an effect that that ranges from a 9% decrease in mortality to 1% increase. This is the whole group. But in this meta-analysis, we also have a subgroup of almost 7,000 patients, which allowed us to estimate a 14% reduction in mortality up to 1% increase in mortality. It's nice to know that the same group is now working in an individual meta-analysis that probably is going to be available soon. Another thing that we've done with the data was this. Actually, this is in the Blue Journal, not the other one. And what we look here, it was which fluid the patients received prior to randomization. So we did a Bayesian analysis, and when we look at the whole group, there is again a low probability of benefit in using balanced solutions. However, when you look at the fluid that the patient took as resuscitated fluids the 24 hours prior to randomization, and if the patient has used only balanced solution before randomization, it doesn't matter if it was a planned admission or, in our case, an unplanned admission with sepsis, there was a high probability of this patient to benefit from receiving balanced solution after randomization. And how about the fast and slow infusion? Actually, BaSICS was a factorial trial, so we do randomize patients both for balance and saline and also for receiving 500 ml in 30 minutes or 90 minutes anytime that they needed a fluid resuscitation challenge. So now we are talking about resuscitation fluids. And in the main analysis, we were again neutral. There was no difference in mortality, which was our primary outcome, either if the patient received this in 30 minutes or in 90 minutes. And there was no difference also in the SOFA score, in the cardiovascular SOFA score, except for a slight difference in day 3 that need not remain different on day 7. So we consider this a neutral trial. However, this, again, is about 10,000 patients, but we do have some physiological data that we are preparing now for publication in a subset, and this was also a predefined sub-study of BaSICS, in a subset of 150 patients. And there is interesting data coming from this. As you can see here, we could not see a difference in the mean arterial pressure. Either the patient received fast or a slow infusion. However, when you look at cardiac output, and unfortunately, we could have access to cardiac output in only 12-8 patients, we could see a rise in cardiac output if the patients received fast infusion, but not when they received slow infusion. And finally, this is unpublished data. They submitted, so I cannot really talk about this, but we are doing an individualized treatment effect analysis. As we know, when you do an RCT, we find out an average effect. We know that we have a lot of heterogeneity when you do RCTs, and maybe if we can identify a subset of patients that can benefit from a therapy, this can help us to individualize the results of the RCTs, but it can also help us, for instance, in a hypothetical interim analysis to drop out an arm or to exclude patients that are being harmed by our intervention. So what Fernando did here was, again, to look at this, and we are able to recommend a specific treatment, meaning a fast infusion or a slow infusion for 30% of the patients in the trial. And if the patient did receive the infusion that was recommended based on the data, I cannot tell exactly, but they did benefit from the trial. For instance, what we saw here, and again, this is submitted, it's not peer-reviewed, the septic patients did benefit. They were more recommended to receive fast therapy, and they did benefit from receiving fast infusion. So what have you learned from the BaSICS study? I think that the first message is that we can really do high-quality research in a middle-income country that results in relevant contributions for the global critical care community. A second message is that hierarchical endpoint analysis using win ratio might help us in the future in critical care trials. Regarding balanced solutions, evidence might point towards an overall benefit for balanced solutions in sepsis, although this was not clear in BaSICS, but we do have to consider the costs that are associated with some balanced solutions in some settings, like Brazil. The benefit might be more pronounced if the fluid therapy, since admission, is made using balanced solutions. And we are not talking about resuscitation fluids, we are talking about any fluid that the patient receives in the ICU. And regarding the rate, the speed that we give fluids, again, there is no evidence based on sensory patient outcomes, but maybe individualized treatment effects may help us tailoring therapy for these patients. Thank you very much for your attention.
Muito obrigado. Is there a question in the room?